And we are live. Okay, let's get to sharing that. Nice. Let's get to sharing that link. How do my eyes burn tonight? Special. Okay, share. Hmm. Oh, fuck. Actually, while I'm sharing, I'm probably gonna need to, yeah, I want to crack open those windows, actually, just so that way I get some airflow in here. Okay, okay, air's already evening out. Never mind. This is going to be standard for pretty much anyone who's looking for the first time. First 5 minutes are probably just going to be me like doing the regular like shares and all that crap. Don't stress it too much. If it's annoying to you, just skip to like the 5 minute mark usually. Like I said, Alright, that's all the sharing I can do for now. So, this is just mainly for anyone who decides to rewatch, I guess, at this point. God, my eyes are burning. Anyways. So, this is about my cartoons magic system. And, as I announced in my server, and there are 12 elements to this system. And these 12 elements are divided into 3 categories: the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary. Primary elements: earth, water, air, and fire. Pretty standard. Earth is the opposite of air, water is the opposite of fire. Another thing. Nothing is immune to anything in this world. There is always a way to hurt something with its own element. So a fire user whose skin cannot be lit on fire can still somehow be hurt by fire, probably by having the fire go inside them. And so forth and so on. The secondary elements: light, darkness, wood, and metal. Wood being the life element, and metal being the inanimate element, essentially. So, in that sense, it covers the organic and the inorganic in a much broader sense than, say, earth or water would. And yes, there is a lot of overlap with what each element can control. So that does play into how these factors can work at times. Like someone who has the earth element can very easily cause like a building to lose chunks that fly off, but that same person can't take, say, a plastic bag and have it just fly straight into someone's face, because that plastic bag is not something that is earth elemental in itself. Next, just that, okay. Next would be with how light and darkness work. Those are kind of more properties of sight-based magic, where it's like, with the light element, hypothetically, that could give you control over everything that's the color red out in the light right now. So let's pretend that you have a white piece of paper. A white piece of paper, but then you shine a red light on it. The part that has the red on it is going to be able to be controlled by that that magic, essentially, because it counts as the color red. And this does not fully go into color theory, how white is all the colors at once being bounced back, meanwhile black is none of the colors. This just goes into colors in the sense of seeing them in an artistic sense. As for the life element, that basically just goes into anything organic and living, pretty much. So, grassroots, you can lob pumpkins at someone's face, and even if like the actual object that the life is inside is dead, you could still control the outer object because it does have traces of life still in it. So obvious opposites are obvious regardless. And then there's the tertiary elements: sound, lightning, time, and space. First of all, fuck physics. Time and space are 2 separate things. Second of all, sound and lightning are opposites. Time and space are opposites. No, this does not necessarily refer to Dialga and Palkia, even though they are rather relevant right now. This just refers to actual, dimensional properties. So, in this regard, something that is a sound element could, well, technically spells in general, when they're verbal, count under the sound element, amusingly enough, even though they can invoke a different element on their own. Say you cast a spell, and then that spell turns into something that is fire, like it creates a fireball or something. Sometimes sound is just something that ends up being used in another sense just to cooperate with something else. This does not necessarily make someone a sound element user. They just happen to have sound elements in what they do until they get a high enough focus that they don't need to use the sound element. So it's like, for the first 5 months, you may still need to say fireball, gradually getting closer and closer to a whisper until you get to month 6, and then you can just lob a fireball, no words said. And no, being deaf does not make you immune to the sound element. Sound waves still have physical properties and can disrupt your organs and other stuff. Sound can actually be pretty nasty. Lightning, well, that's just basically just all the electrical impulses, and even delving into magnetism. Because at that point, it technically comes off as a restrictive element, but at the same time, it's not. It's weird. Time, self-explanatory. Forward, back, seeing what happened, seeing things that could happen. Freezing time, shit like that. It's weird. And when you get to space, that results in things like teleporting, warping, distortions, sometimes even gravity. And each of these elements can have their own essence essentially added to an attack. So let's say one person has a time punch that just has time element essence to it, rather than actually having any temporal effect for the most part. Same with a space punch or a fire punch, etc. So in that regard, that's going to be a thing of... may as well try something real quick. Anyways, yeah, back to what I was saying. Let's see, that covered the essences. I may as well just talk about strengths and weaknesses now. Sometimes your own element can actually be your weakness. So when someone is developing their magic powers, the first thing that will develop when they are learning to properly harness them, not like in a casual sense, but in a proper full-on capacity, like full-on actually properly learning beyond the instinctual level, that's when you actually get into developing the other aspects, like weaknesses, resistances, things like that. Usually someone's limited to about 3 weaknesses and 4 resistances, though both can actually happen in extents, and sometimes it happens very little, and sometimes it can happen a lot. It's very rare that someone has 0 weaknesses or 0 resistances. And just because you use one element does not mean that you are automatically weak to its opposite. It just means you're more likely to be weak to it. So let's pretend someone is a fire user. They can still end up being weak to fire, or they might end up weak to the ground element, or earth element, or the darkness element. They might even end up weak to space, for all we know. Usually it's just a guessing game, but sometimes it's a direct correlation. Roughly about 65% of the time, it's just going to be a direct one-to-one. Fire user, that means you're weak to water. Lightning user, that means you're weak to sound. And then there's the occasional case where that's not the case. And that's where things get fun. So here you have this person who's a necromancer, so they're using the obvious metal element, because not life. And what they're doing is they're not taking any damage from wood element attacks. Like, at all. If anything, they seem to be deflecting it no problem. So, now you're stuck wondering, what do I do with this fucko? You gotta actually experiment sometimes, and that's the tricky thing with people in this world. They don't always know they need to experiment with elements. Then there are other weird powers that can just fall into different categories. Super speed can sometimes be a light, a lightning, or a time element thing, rarely ever space, never fire, never earth, etc. There's even a couple cases where it's the darkness element in a funny way. Then you get to other things where it's much more one-to-one, where you have things like mechapathy or technopathy, which control machines and electronics respectively. Those usually fall directly into lightning or metal. And the fun thing about this system is, and I did not intend this, but you can actually have these magic powers assigned in different ways to different non-scientifically direct beings from other worlds. Look at the Flash, for example. He has the elements of lightning and time at his disposal very easily. Cisco Ramon from the same series. He very obviously has space powers, and even a smidge of time in there because of his ability to see the future and other timelines, stuff like that. So that's actually really fun. But then you get to someone like Superman, who does not use magic at all. His whole thing is something entirely separate, which is called ki, which, depending on how far I get into magic discussion and if I have any questions before the 30-minute mark, I might get into as well. And something to keep in mind is, where there's magic, there's also anti-magic, which basically just runs on an inverse wavelength in a weird way. So this is all on the vibration frequencies. That stuff I don't really want to delve into because it doesn't matter too much. But essentially, let's pretend you have the same input for magic and anti-magic. If it's a magic input and you're doing fire, then running it through anti-magic, it ends up becoming water. And that's where things get weird. Think of it a little bit like how Curse in Pokemon with a Protean user ends up hurting the user if they have Protean, and they end up changing to ghost type as they use curse. So from there, I'm just gonna ramble off a few other characters who use magic and what they relate to. Raven from Teen Titans, Darkness, and Space, amusingly enough. Let's see here. Sora from Kingdom Hearts. He has the time element. Yes, that's actually canon with some of his other powers. Light element, because no doi. And, well, he just kind of harnesses other elements anyways through his various spells, like Arrow. Rafika, if I'm remembering correctly, that one kind of does hard light constructs type of thing, though that one doesn't really have a clearly defined element. It's kind of a cross between light, air, and even space on some level, if you really want to push it to a third element. Let's see. Force fields are generally just like something that default to the light element because of their coloration and essentially being hard light constructs. Refer to the gems as example from Steven Universe for other hard light constructs. Let's see. Okay, what else is there? My Hero Academia, that's another fun one. When Deku, and this is going to have spoilers, just a warning. When Deku unlocks Black Whip, that is him using the darkness element. Bakugo is very obviously fire element, because, well, why not? Present Mike, sound element, obviously. Mr. Aizawa, he is the light element, because he requires sight to use his quirk. Overhaul actually falls into both the wood and metal elements, because he completely deconstructs and reconstructs them equally. Let's see. Eri, that precious little girl, very obviously time elemental. Recovery Girl uses the wood element. Let's see. Kirishima, because of his body hardening and all that other stuff, that is actually the earth element that he harnesses for his attacks and his quirk, essentially. Let's see. The pro hero Ectoplasm. His is actually considered space crossed with wind element because it uses his breath, and those are physical clones of himself. Twice also uses the space element because creating clones is a reality bending thing. Hawks uses the wind element because obvious, with a touch of life just as he's controlling his feathers. What did my girlfriend say? Okay. I guess because that's relevant, something else that's relevant that can be used is Encanto. With Encanto, Luisa has super strength, though in her case that's technically ki, not so much an actual element. Meanwhile, Camilo tends to have space powers. That's his thing. Mirabelle's mom, she has the wood element with her healing magic. What else is there? Oh, Antonio, the little boy that talks to animals with the Dr. Dolittle powers. Yeah, his is sound element. I will be right back. I need to turn off my car. Something's burning my eyes, and I know what it is. Okay, I will live. Oh, God. Ow! Ugh, come on. Okay. Yeah, these. And let's see. Um, oh, Isabel, the flower girl, who seems to always need to appear perfect. She is the life element as well, because obvious. And you're probably wondering where weather powers fall into this, because that may as well be mentioned as well. Weather powers solidly fall into the wind element, though given other circumstances, they can actually touch into like water and other stuff if they need to, though that's not always a guarantee. Just enough air pressure and barometric pressure is enough to change weather in general. Oh my God. Ow. Yes, feel free to laugh at my pain. I don't care. And I'm rambling to absolutely no one. That's just funny. Let's see. But yeah. Oh, and then there's functional weaknesses. That's a fun thing to get into for the next 2.5 minutes. Functional weaknesses mean that this person doesn't have any standout weaknesses, but they're still vulnerable to this thing that can still something specific can still hurt them. And that's how it works for that person. It still hurts them without them having to be weak to it necessarily. Think of it like how a fire type move can still hurt most electric types in Pokemon, for example. Oh God, my eyes. Oh, what else is there? Fuck. Okay. So yeah, that's about where things are. I guess I'll get into Ki now because Ki is also its own thing, and I'm still trying to develop that aspect of things. But Ki is essentially the mortal exclusive set of abilities that can counter magic without being anti magic. And yes, this works, and yes, this can manifest into something like the Kamehameha, but the idea I'm having with it is that there are 12 different styles of Ki that relate to like specific schools of harnessing it, essentially. And this is like raw emotional energy crossed with like adrenaline, other spiritual stuff, without it actually being a physical magical thing type of deal. And sometimes it can just result in someone being able to like hulk out, like literally hulk, turn, like physically become big and strong and muscly like the Hulk. Excuse me. But other times it can just result in you being able to just extend your arms, stuff like that, or become hyper durable, where you could take an entire firing squadron of machine guns to the chest and still just look at it and be like, huh, that pinched a little. And sometimes it can come from a power source like the sun, or sometimes it can just come from like your own self. And it can even be like fuck. It can just be like Sometimes it can just be like a specific style of carrying yourself, even. Like a few of the ones that would exist are like bubble, flow, uh, synchro, or synchronize, bleh, stuff like that. And it's not that big of a deal. God. It's just mainly just it's mainly just like a testament to how humans are able to still have their own powers even when they're not magical. Yeah, like it's also gonna have like 12 to it because, well, why the heck shouldn't it? There's gonna and these are probably gonna be like referential names mostly with still distinct styles anyways, because, well, they should still have those distinct styles even if I can't always get to them. Well, I guess I may as well talk about, actually, nah, I got nothing else right now. I'm gonna actually end up having to end stream early. My eyes hurt way too much right now. Uh, yeah, sorry for anyone watching who was getting heavily invested. But as it stands, 33 minutes, no one showed up. I'm gonna dip. Feel free to watch the VOD or whatever. Oh, wait, you're already doing that. Sorry. Whatever. Bye. Uh, I'll be back next week, hopefully in a better condition. Oh, fuck. End stream.